Awesome. And so today we're going to talk about the WRC, give an overview about our services and programs, talk more specifically about Women's History Month, and take back the week, and then close it off with two of our really amazing student leaders at the WRC so that they can share their experiences. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lori.
All right, so just a little bit of an overview about the WRC. The Women's Resource Center serves women and all people who face gender-based oppression. We offer various leadership opportunities like the Brave Project, the Women and Gender Equity Program, and educational and healing events that address gender justice that you'll get to hear about a little bit later in our presentation. And during the last school year, 2020 to 2021, the WRC began two initiatives to increase support for women in STEM and support for pregnant and parenting students. This is a sample of some of our programming that we have coming up this semester. We have a lot that's still in development as we move into the next few months, but these are a few of the flyers for programs that we have coming up. On the left, we have our women and gender equity programming events, such as expanding time management, managing school in a virtual space, gender and race in the workplace, and career planning in a virtual space. Those are exciting things that we have coming up throughout the next couple of months. In the middle, you see our Queer Femme Community Circle, which we have already started off with All About Love on the 8th, and has a few more sessions coming up. And then our Women of Color Empowerment Group, which meets on Thursdays from 5:30 to 7 and is in collaboration with the Counseling and Psychological Services and the CIR. Next, we have the Brave Project. The Brave Project is a certificate program that is open to students, faculty, and staff and provides them with intensive and comprehensive training on sexual violence. Topics it covered include SDSU policies and procedures, rape culture, consent, communication, identity, power, and supporting survivors through a trauma-informed lens and strategies for creating change. Right now, the Brave Project is being hosted asynchronously for people to engage in, with a few options to check in with us via live Q&A Zooms. And you can register this semester to take it at bit.ly/Brave Project 21, or you can wait to take it in person in one of the following semesters.
Awesome. I'll talk to you all more about our new Pregnant and Parenting Student Initiative. So last semester, the Women's Resource Center started a working group with folks from EOP and Career Services and the Women's Resource Center to talk about ways that we could increase support to students who are parents. And one of the ways that we wanted to approach this, this need was to create a virtual resource fair. So we had last semester a fully virtual resource fair where we had two keynote speakers who are current San Diego State students who talked about their experiences being pregnant as a student or being a parent and a student, and offered words of wisdom to fellow parenting students. And then we opened it up to the resource fair portion, which included folks from off campus and off campus, or on campus and off campus, to talk about the services that they provide. We had folks from the Family Justice Center, folks from Counseling and Psychological Services, and many more. The recording for the keynote is on our YouTube channel, so I'm happy to provide all of those links and drop them in the chat when we transition over to the panel portion. But yes, if that is of interest to you, or if you know of any parents or any students who are parents, or you yourself work with parenting students, I think that that would be a really powerful way to learn more about this community. And then this semester, we're going to start a monthly email newsletter. And I really want to give credit to Lisa, who is one of our feminist peer educators at the Women's Resource Center. She creates infographics for parenting students. Last semester, she did back to school infographics for different age groups, specifically how to support your children with remote or distance learning. And then this semester, as part of our monthly newsletter, we're partnering with folks from the College of Education to do a how to talk to your kids about blank. So for February, we'll talk about how to talk to your kids about race. March, which is just around the corner, how to talk to your kids about gender, and then April, how to talk to your kids about mental health. And all of those lectures will be accompanied by infographics to um, supplement that information. And then we'll also have book talks in collaboration with the SDSU library for book recommendations on how to further this learning. So if this is of interest to you, we'll also highlight relevant information or programs such as the general body meetings for SPA, which is the Student Parent and Allies Association. I highly recommend that you sign up to that newsletter by typing in bit.ly/TPS newsletter. And I also wanted to talk to you more about our Women in STEM initiative. So I saw Telma Chavez in the crowd. That made me really happy. So there have been a lot of folks who have been just incredible in furthering support for gender minoritized students in STEM. There's a lot of really amazing work that's already being done on campus, and we really wanted to leverage the Women's Resource Center as a way to create more of a hub or way for incoming students who are for women in STEM to find resources right away in a community right away. So we have our 6 dates on the flyer on the slide, and we're still meeting. The group is a really vibrant space that I've learned a lot from. My academic background is not in STEM, but it's been a real delight to be there and learn from faculty and staff who come and do guest lectures for our group. So this semester, our 3 topics are gender and science, SESU STEM resources, and navigating sexist microaggressions. So each of these sessions alternate between faculty-led lectures and peer-to-peer discussion groups. So February 9th was a lecture. February 23 was a peer-to-peer discussion group led by Celine, who is a student panelist who will talk with you all in a bit. And then March 10th, we'll have SDSU STEM resources. And April 8th, we'll have the Navigating Sexist Microaggressions lecture. So if that's of interest to you, please do check it out. The bit.ly, I know we're going to throw a lot of bit.lys at you today, but it's bit.ly/WRC STEM. So highly encourage you to check it out. Great. So after seeing an overview of our programs and services, I wanted to talk to you more about Women's History Month. So it's really exciting. March is literally less than a week away. I don't know how we've gotten here so fast, but March, for folks that may or may not know, is recognizes women's rights and the ongoing efforts for intersectional gender justice. And this year, 2021, it's a huge privilege to launch the first inaugural Women's History Month celebration at state. And that's not to say that work to celebrate women and feminism and gender justice hasn't been done in the past at state. That's far from true. We have a really long feminist history at SDSU, but this year we're gonna put together a really exciting list and week of programs that range from passive programming, live programming, and I went ahead and shouted out our sponsors on the screen just because it's truly a collective and group effort. And so I want to name and recognize the APITA Resource Center, the Black Resource Center, Career Services, the Center for Intercultural Relations, the Department of Women's Studies, the Latina Network, the Native Resource Center, EOP, the Pride Center, and also the UCSD and USD Women's Center. So our keynote for Women's History Month will actually be a feminist future series in collaboration with women's centers in other universities, which is really exciting. So I'll go ahead and talk more about that in this next slide. So we'll be posting about this on our social media. If you're an avid Instagram user, definitely give us a follow at SDSUWRC. We'll be posting all of this information on here. We also have an email newsletter that we send once a week. So don't feel like you need to remember this or have all of this by memory. We'll definitely have it live. But I'll go ahead and read them out, and perhaps if one of them intrigues you or you want to learn more about it, once we open up to Q&A, you can feel free to ask more. So on this first week, which is next week, we will have a feminist future series with Julesy. We will have a Mujer a Mujer, Consejos Sabios by the Latina Network, Queering Feminism, Inspiration from Cutie BIPOC Activists by the Women's Resource Center students, and Fundamental Film Screenings by the Women's Resource Center students in collaboration with the Fundamental Film Series. So these last two, Queering Feminism and Fundamentals, is a series. So that'll also hopefully be a way to engage folks where they're at. If they want to have more of like a long-standing series to attend to, they can. But that's also not to say that you have to attend every single session. You can drop in to whichever one aligns with your schedule or appeals most to you. For the second week of March, we'll have a sexual health and stretch in collaboration with the Native Resource Center, Radical Healing for Women of Color with the Steve Fund, which is dedicated to supporting folks of color and students of color specifically with mental health. And we will have Queering Feminism Part 2 and Fundamentals Film Screening Part 2. And one thing that I actually didn't mention was this text at the bottom of the slide. So that, like I said, there will be a variety of programming, and we'll have different social media campaigns by the APITA Center highlighting APITA women, with the Student Ability Success Center highlighting disability activists. We will also have the Supernova Dance Troupe film Dance in recognition of Women's History Month. So again, a lot of different ways to engage folks in Women's History Month. Great. The third week, things will be picking up even more. So we'll have Queer Femme Community Circle, which Lori spoke to a little bit towards the beginning of the presentation. We'll have Nikki Giovanni talk about Where Now, Poetry to Promise, and that's going to be a guest lecture hosted by the Black Resource Center. Celebrating the Joy of Black Women, which will be hosted by the Black Women's Healing Pod. And that is a collective that was started by SDSU alumni. So we'll be really excited to welcome them. We'll have Feminist Abolition and Disability Justice hosted by the Women's Studies Department, Queering Feminism, Feminist Future Series with Kimberly Nicole Foster, following that collaboration with the UCSD and USD Women's Centers, and Fundamentals Film Screening. Then the fourth week, we will have From Exotic to Expendable, the stereotypes that APITA women fight, hosted by the APITA Resource Center, Environmental Justice on the US-Mexico border, hosted by the Department of Women's Studies, Decolonizing Attraction, APITA Stereotypes and Third World Solidarity, hosted by the Women's Resource Center Feminist Peer Educators, and that'll actually be a follow-up to the From Exotic to Expendable event. So if folks want to learn more, engage more in conversation, that'll be a space to continue the conversation. And then we will have Queering Feminism and Gender and Race in the Workplace, hosted by the WRC, specifically our Women and Gender Equity Program, and then the Fundamentals Film Screening. And last but not least, the very last week, we will have Leveraging Your Parenting Capital for Career Readiness. That'll be hosted by Career Services, EOP, and STA, which is the Student Parent and Allies Association. And close off with the third and last installment of the Feminist Future series with Jessica Salgado. So hopefully that is exciting. I know that we are super excited to launch this, and we'll be happy to answer any questions as well.
After Women's History Month coming up on the horizon, we have Take Back the Week. So nationally, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and every year our Sexual Violence Task Force hosts Take Back the Week to raise awareness about sexual assault and provide spaces to center survivors' healing and resilience. This week, the theme for Take Back the Week is transformative justice, so you'll see that theme running through our programming. Our sponsors for this year, those that are hosting programming, are the College of Arts and Letters, the Department of Women's Studies, the Latino Social Work Association, Outreach, the Pride Center, Wellbeing and Health Promotion, the WRC, and Women's Outreach Association. So this is an overview of what the week will look like. On Monday, we'll have Queering Sexual Violence, what gets left out of sexual violence prevention, and transformative justice and relationships. On Tuesday, we will have 11 things that diet culture and rape culture have in common, and a conversation with the University of Arizona Consortium on Gender-Based Violence. On Wednesday, we'll have LGBTQ love talks and an event called Anyone Can Do Harm, Will You? Thursday is a rest and recovery day, so we will be resting and recovering to amp up for Friday, when we will have supporting survivors and Come Again, an inclusive virtual sex ed event. And similarly to Women's History Month, we'll also have passive programming that you can find on our website or Instagram. And so it'll be a busy, busy week. So if you're interested in all of these things that we've been talking about and you want to hear as we have the particulars of how to register and get involved and stay involved, we've mentioned a few links throughout, but really the best way to stay in contact with us is through these means. So we have our virtual front desk flyer here. You can drop in Mondays and Wednesdays, 11 to 3:30, Tuesdays and Thursdays, noon to 3:30 at our virtual front desk, and see our WRC feminist peer educators, fellows, graduate assistants, wage mentors, and ask any questions about programming or how to get involved. We also have our Instagram, SDSU WRC, our email, wrc@sdsu.edu. You can sign up for our general newsletter at bit.ly/WRC news. And then again, our website will be where all this information is hosted through, and you can find recordings of our events. So I wanted to make some space and turn it over to hear from our two WRC students who are here today. And I'll give them an opportunity to talk a little bit more specifically about the projects that they work on and their experiences here. And if you both want to start off by introducing yourself with your name, pronouns, year, major, minor, graduate program, and your role at the WRC.
I can start. Everything froze up, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't like talking over anyone, all of that. But hello, my name's Carly. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in my 5th year at SDSU. And my major in women's studies, and my role at the WRC is a wage mentor.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and all of us here. My name is Celine. I use pronouns she, her, hers, or they, them, theirs. I'm looking at what I have to answer as well. I'm a graduate assistant at the WRC. It's my 2nd year at SDSU, so I'm in a master's program for psychology, specifically focused on social psychological research. I can jump into question number 2 because I think like we are describing more of our roles at the WRC. So I lead a lot of the programming at the WRC, especially internal training for our staff and also internally led center events. So you saw some of our series for Women's History Month include Decolonizing Attraction or Queering Feminism or Queering Sexual Violence. And I also help lead the Queer Femme Community Circle as well. So these are things that we do in collaboration with other people, and I help with collabs or collaborations across campus. So maybe I've talked to some of you emailing other centers. Elizabeth and Lori tend to lead a lot of the external programming, like they got all of our speakers for our Feminist Future series, but I help lead programming with staff. I also help staff and guide them to creating feminist programming that based on their feminist passions as well. So one of my favorite things about this role is in the beginning of the semester, we just have a meeting where I ask every staff member, what would you like to do this semester? What is your passion? What do you want to see come alive? And then we just make a series or an event based on it. And so I've led internal trainings on how to maybe facilitate events and discussions with a little bit more equity. How do you handle different gender minorities in a discussion about gender equity, right? Knowing that each identity experiences that space differently. And so, yeah, I also help lead the Women in STEM support group and other typical programming. Lori and another graduate assistant mainly lead our BRAVE project. So you get to interface with tons of us throughout all of this. And I like that all of the staff is involved in all our programming. So, yeah, I also wanted to stress that our center really tries to center and elevate and uplift the voices of queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So we hope that this is reflected in our programming. And those are really the identities that we're trying to center and cater to, especially this academic year.
Awesome. Carly, do you want to answer the same question, telling us a little bit more about your role and the projects that you've been involved in? All right, it looks like Carly might be having some technical issues. That's okay. Um, Carly, can you hear us? No, it looks like they're frozen. All right, that's all right. Celine, do you want to jump into our next question, which is during your first year at SDSU, how did you find and what does your feminist community look like now?
So I mentioned before that I was in a master's program for psychology, and so I felt like my first year, um, I wanted to make sure to connect to student organizations. I find that grad students are sometimes, it's a little bit more difficult to get us involved in different activities, and that's because of the nature of our classes, our work, of course. But also, we like at the Women's Resource Center, we like also want to cater events to graduate students, knowing right that they don't tend to show up to events because they're not catered to them as often. So I wanted to do that, but I was already embedded in a pretty liberal, if not more leftist and progressive leaning program already. And psychology, and my department was very supportive, and I kind of took the first year to get acclimated to all the resources SDSU had. I like checked out each office at least once and wanted to just get to know campus. I was really centered in the like, I don't even know, like life sciences and like one little corner of campus, and so it took me genuinely like 3 months to know where everything was. So yeah, I just took that first year to kind of adjust to campus, grad school, and all what that adjustment was like from undergrad. Struggled with that hardcore, getting used to that. Um, with my advisor, I had a lot of department support for well-being as well. But then I applied to the WRC Fellows program because I really wanted to get connected to other people in the campus community. Besides my cohort, I have a pretty small cohort of 24 students and 6 of us in my subgroup in psychology. So I wanted to connect to more feminist leaders and feminist students. And through there, I met all the WRC staff and other friends last spring. So I was a fellow for the WRC in spring 2020. Yeah, and from then I got connected to everybody. And that also helped connect me to other local work in the San Diego community. And so I would say that my feminist community now consists of lots of local San Diego organizations as well, such as We All We Got San Diego, or Asian Solidarity Collective, or Showing Up for Racial Justice San Diego. And these are all organizations that I think are aware of our Women's Resource Center at SDSU. Yeah, and it was really helpful to get connected and to meet all my peers and to meet people from all different grade levels, both graduate students and undergraduate students, through becoming a fellow.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for bearing with my technical difficulties. I'll go ahead and answer the past 2 questions. The first is my position as a wage mentor is basically revolves around the wage program, where I meet with around 10 freshman students and help them transition into life at SDSU. This year,
Mm, I'm trying to give Carly a second to hopefully get back on.
hear me.
Can hear you a little bit now.
Okay.
Okay.
I apologize. This whole presentation has been fine, and then as soon as it stops, my internet, of course, is not stable.
Great.
I'll go ahead and answer the third question about my first year at SDSU. I basically didn't really have a feminist community my first year at SDSU, and I didn't really know what that meant until I became more involved with the Women's Resource Center, and it was kind of by chance. I'm interested in pursuing medicine and I'm really interested in women's health. So I thought, oh, like I'll work at the Women's Resource Center and just be more involved with like a community of women, but I didn't even really understand like the intersectionality and like the feminist aspect, the social justice aspect that I was going to become involved in and really like became super passionate about. So my feminist community now is literally everyone at the Women's Resource Center. It's been so amazing to just like work with Celine, for example. We both became fellows at the same time and then have continued to like stay with the Women's Resource Center. And it's been really cool to get to know everyone's specific passions, whether it be through the Brave Project or their own events that they create. So I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is, looking back at your time in the WRC, what are you most proud of, or what is your favorite memory?
I can probably answer a little bit to both questions. I think some of my favorite memories or have been like working on relationships with people at the WRC. So I can definitely say that some of my closest friends have come because our center really centers, sorry, our Women's Resource Center really centers compassion, and also just like, I don't know, really equitable like work relationships with each other, but also I think in our working ethic, we try to center seeing the best in each other, but also uplifting each other and each other's skills. And I definitely have received a lot of professional development from working here, but I don't know, it really lends itself to appreciating and getting close to other people when you're constantly in a position, right, to center compassion with your relationship with them and vice versa. And I also want to say, kind of to answer the previous question related to finding a feminist community, that all of our events, even the ones that are like series, they're not super, like they're not exclusive at all, I would say. And that's also based on our feedback from students. So if you have any that you think would benefit from finding any sort of community that's women oriented, or not even women, some of our events are geared towards like certain ethnic minorities, that we really try to like build a inclusive discussion community throughout each of our events, and we maintain contact through like group meets, or we like, I don't know, the same people tend to show up, but a lot of new people come every single time. And so I don't know, I was really intimidated when I became a fellow, for example, because I saw all of the staff were super close knit and really close to each other. And I would say that we are close and very supportive, but I was like, how on earth are they going to welcome somebody new, or can I be involved in that? But even when attending events for the first time and like not even working at the center, I felt like immediately included, and like I could be a part of that. And so that's my favorite part, and I think that I'm most proud of in like our programming, is that people can come for the first time, and even if they can stay for 30 minutes, when they tell us that they got something out of it, or they're like, this was a great break, I felt really connected, or they say that they learned something new and they're going to apply this to the classroom, or we do some skills training on how you ask your professor questions or advocate for yourself in like the classroom or something. And they like have an objective and like, I'm going to apply this next week, or I know that what class I can apply this to. That's what makes me most proud, I think, and like happiest to connect with other people. And I really feel that we connect with our participants and the campus community throughout every event, and that's our goal.
Well, I second everything Celine has said, but to kind of add my own twist, I think that one of the things that I'm most proud of is just how much I've grown at my time with my time at the Women's Resource Center. Like I kind of mentioned before, I kind of learned about the community by chance, thinking I was signing up for something else, and this is so much better than what I expected. And it's been really amazing to learn so much just about what inclusivity means and what it means to have intersectional approaches to so many different things that we talk about at the Women's Resource Center. And it's really impacted kind of how I look at everything that I do, not just with my work at the Women's Resource Center, but my time in other student organizations or pursuing research and thinking about feminist approaches to things I'm doing in the lab and stuff like that. It's just been like so amazing to incorporate everything I've learned into other areas in my life.
Thank you both. Our last question for you two is, a part of equity-minded student support involves getting a holistic view of students' lives and learning about the resources one can refer students to. What are ways that SDSU faculty and staff can support our women community and or utilize the WRC?
No, mine, Carly, I guess I can answer. So we linked our website as well as our YouTube on there, and I would say that the WRC strives, and I think hopefully we're doing a good job of this, but we're a great hub for resources, and so you can get connected to other campus, other campus centers and hubs if we can't handle it, but we also have like on our website a lot of links to different resources, as well as our programming that have been recorded. So we hope that we're a hub for resources. I would also recommend checking out our passive programming for general education on women-centered allyship for students. So if you have students or you work with students or you're a peer to students who are women identified, our passive programming addresses a lot of allyship and general education on sexual violence, domestic violence, as well as just being an ally. As Lori shared previously, our front desk hours, we also have drop-in hours for financial resources, for feminist education, and for connecting students to campus resources. So all of us as staff are coached in academic support, but also coached in connecting students to greater San Diego resources, as well as especially campus resources. And these can be connected to maybe Title IX issues, to domestic violence, sexual violence, gender-based issues, but they're also connected to just academic wellness and financial like literacy, stability, economic resources in general. And then lastly, I would say, or maybe not lastly, I don't know, I put attend our events, whether or not you're a staff member, you're a faculty member, you're a grad student, you're an undergraduate student. We have faculty attend our events all the time. Our events are geared towards reflection, growth, and community. So there's something for everybody, hopefully, no matter what you're looking for. You can connect with other people, but we hope that you'll grow in your intersectional feminist lens in some way, or grow in your ability to support students. That's our goal with each event. And then our programs, sometimes they're identity specific and centered on certain experiences. So if you have students that have certain experiences or they disclose something to you, you can direct them to those series or events, such as our Women of Color support group or a Queer Femme Healing Circle. And then lastly, we hope that this can also be a community. I know when I first moved to San Diego, or I moved here for the graduate program, I didn't know anybody, and I was like, I really want to make friends, get to know people. And so I just dropped by the cultural centers, right, to see what they would have to offer. And all of us have been there, and all of us are in similar positions of wanting to support our campus community more. And so hopefully we can provide some resources for all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Celine. I would say to add on to that, specifically as SDSU faculty or staff, the most important things would just be acknowledging and basically just not only acknowledging, but also understanding that people who identify as women are oppressed, even if your experience isn't the same as someone else's. And I think that the Women's Resource Center doesn't only cater to women. So knowing that when you're sending someone to the Women's Resource Center, you're really sending them to a welcoming place and a place for not only women. You can also be an ally or a part of another oppressed group. Or if you don't think you're part of any oppressed group, you could still be a part of the Women's Resource Center. And I think that because my assumption of the Women's Resource Center was different from what it actually is, I assume that staff and faculty have the same, might have the same assumptions. So I think what Celine said is really important, like attending events just to see like, what does this center even offer? Same with other resource centers and cultural centers.
Thank you so much, Celine and Carly. It was great to hear a little bit from you. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Elspeth to close us out.
Great, thank you all, and to Celine and Carly for speaking about your experiences, and to all of you for your attendance and attention. It really means a lot to us to see you all come out and support. Like, I think this already speaks to your level of love and care that you have for students. So I want to thank you. And we have about 10 minutes left, so I want to open it up to any questions or comments that folks have for any of us, for Lori, for me, for Celine, Carly, anybody.